Hey guys, Mike from Mailstand here. Today I'm going to walk through exactly how to set up a email account from scratch for Google Workspace. So first we're going to go to namecheap.com and we are going to buy a domain. So in this case I'm just going to buy rar.com. It's going to be a placeholder and I'm going to add to a cart and check out. All right, now that we have a domain name purchase, we are going to go into the DNS settings of the domain. All right, now that we have purchased the domain, we are going to manage the DNS settings. Basically within the DNS settings, that is what connects everything from your website to your MX records. Basically MX records allow for the domain name to talk to Google's mail servers, meaning that Google can send and receive emails from your domain name. So basically we're going to first set up what we call as a redirect, meaning if I go to rar.com right now, it's just going to say something like parked with Namecheap or registered at Namecheap like this. And so what we want to have happen is we actually want it to go to our website that we're selling specifically for a cold email, because email providers will actually visit the website to see if it's actually live or not. So if it's a placeholder website or the site's down, you're not going to have as good of a reputation. So within here, what we're going to do is just change rar.com to whatever website you're doing to like whatever you're selling. So in this case, we're selling Mailstand. So we're going to redirect to that. And then that removes the parking page here that we have. And so one thing to note in general about everything is that DNS settings, there's a term called propagating. And all that really means is updating on the back end. So it actually, any change that you make within Namecheap is going to take between 24 and 48 hours to update. Sometimes it's immediate, but in general, like if something's not working, so in this case, I'm sending it to mailstand.com, it's updating in the back end within Namecheap, but if you're all of a sudden going to this and saying, hey, it's broken, it just means that it hasn't updated. So before you kind of reach out to any kind of support, whatever tool you're using, or even Namecheap support, wait 24 to 48 hours and see if it updates. But now by setting up the URL redirect, now it's going to Mailstand, and that is the first step in setting up. So basically we just bought a domain and then set up what's called a URL redirect on your domain. All right, now that we have our purchased domain pointing to the product that we're selling, meaning if we go to rar.com, we will land on mailstand.com. Now, we are going to now set up our MX records to point to Google Workspace so we can start sending and receiving emails. So we're going to go to Google Workspace, and then I generally Google it and click pricing, and then I click here to get started, mainly because if you just click get started up here, it will actually start you off on the $12 a month plan. So I click here to get started. I'm just going to make the name whatever the domain name is, and then I'm going to go hit next, and then I will do generally you kind of set it up as like an account manager or your person's name. So in this case I'm just going to set it up as Sarah Williams. Fun fact, female names do better than male names in cold email as well. So current email address, in this case, I will just do team@mailstand.com. Okay, so now does the business have a domain? Yes. And so all they're doing is just looking to see how to set things up. So it'll kind of do that, hit next. Not going to hit educate your users. In this case, I will just do Sarah, and then fill out the CAPTCHA here. So one thing to note when creating Google Workspace accounts, they have CAPTCHAs. There's no way to automatically create mailboxes unless you use a tool called DynoSend. I'll put a link in the description as well. And then you're not able to create, so many mailboxes with the same credit cards, but basically this system is great for, maybe sending a couple thousand a day. You can probably create between 5 and 10 Google Workspaces and spread them out across mailstand.com to have multiple mailboxes at once. So going to do that and going to check out quickly. So I will pause this and go to the next screen. All right, now we're ready to continue the setup. So we're going to close this screen. Now we're in the admin console. Step one, we're just protecting the domain, meaning we just have to tell Google that we do in fact own this by adding a TXT record. Basically, Google will go to rar.com and behind the scenes will check the verification. So that is by editing the DNS settings. So you're going to do text, and then the host is just @ meaning there's no subdomain. So @ really just means going to the root domain, and then we're taking that value and adding it here and hitting check. Again, with propagation, this little change could take between 24 and 48 hours. In some cases, it is faster, but if I click here to click for protect domain, don't be discouraged if it doesn't go through right away. Generally, what I like to do is wait about 10 minutes and then click protect domain, because I just generally know it takes longer for this to update. So I will wait 10 minutes and then hit protect domain. All right, so now it is protected. Basically, Google Workspace is going to rar.com and now seeing that there is a TXT value on our DNS settings. Next, we can create users. So there is a lot of issue around, should I create an alias? Should I create separate mailboxes? Do I need to do everything under one domain? The best way to go about this is to set up 3 mailboxes under a domain and set up no aliases. Aliases do not do anything. So basically what we do here is actually create a couple of different mailboxes, all with similar names. So actually in this case we can do Sarah Williams and hit save user. So email aliases, from an email deliverability standpoint, they don't really do anything. So when you are sending, so say if I had an email address saying hi@RAR and I start sending emails out from hi, it's really sending it from Sarah Williams. So like people think that you can just create 10 different aliases and those are 10 different mailboxes. They're all the alias is tied to the email username, and the email username is tied to an IP address, and the IP address is what actually has a sender reputation. So hi and hi2 have the same reputation as hi22 and hi222, right? So it's all kind of like email alias is more for like if you want to receive emails from team at RAR, it goes there. But from a sending aspect, it has nothing to do with deliverability. So that's a really important point that people get confused about. So that's why it actually has to be separate accounts. We did that, and then let's see. So they, for some reason, are not updating it. I'm going to create another user, and going to do, for some reason, it didn't update. S. Williams, save user. Okay. Let's say Sarah Williams. Okay, so it looks like it did add the 3. It's just not updating. Okay, and finish. Great. And so now the important part is we want to set up the MX records. This basically allows Google or Gmail to connect to the domain and send and receive emails. So what we are going to do is they actually make it pretty easy within Namecheap. Part of the reason why we do it, you just click Gmail and they will set up the records as needed. So you hit save changes. Again, anytime you hit save in Namecheap, this could take between 24 and 48 hours. Sometimes it could be within the hour. So one thing to note, if you are setting it up with other mailboxes, all you have to do is search for MX Records Gmail, and it will tell you where to point new records to. So, you can just look around these support docs, but generally speaking, it's setting up a lot of different MX records, within the settings here. But generally speaking, Namecheap is the easiest to do it. Namecheap also has a really good domain reputation. So when it comes to email deliverability, you have domain reputation and the sender IP reputation. So basically, when you sync a mailbox to Mailstand, will actually tell you both. So there's a reputation on Namecheap that's generally tied to your domain name, and then each email address that's sending has an IP address tied to it, and those also have reputations tied to it. So so in this case, rar.com has a reputation tied to Namecheap, and then like the Sarah at rar.com also has a reputation. So both, kind of going to the earlier video in this chapter, both have reputations, and both can be have issues depending. So we're going to hit activate Gmail and see if it synced. Okay, so MX records are updated and Gmail can now see them, which is perfect. One thing to note is it still could take 48 hours for the mailbox to be set up, right? So, for example, if you go to the account and actually send an email to the new email address that we just set up, it's likely that it'll bounce. It still takes a couple of hours for everything to set up. So just something to take note that, like, really you shouldn't be sending emails right away. It may take some time. So later in this video, we will be syncing to, for example, like warm up inbox to kind of send emails and warm up the reputation. I even suggest waiting 24 to 48 hours to set that up as well, just so that, again, all these DNS settings that we're working with in Namecheap, they are set up properly. So, so now what we're going to do is set up our DMARC, DKIM, and SPF records. Now, everybody in the cold email world talks about this. They just say set it up, right? And a lot of the time they don't really know what they're talking about. So I wanted to take the moment to kind of outline part of the reason why it's so important. So generally speaking, and we do have other videos that drill in specifically on SPF, DKIM, and DMARC and exactly what they do. But generally speaking, they are tags on the email server when they send out. So for example, on DKIM, when you're sending an outbound email from the mail server that we just set up, basically we're putting a tag on it saying, hey, it's from us. And really, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in between that to kind of verify if you're sending an email. But really what it's doing is it's determining if you're going to land in the inbox and the spam box. So a quick example is, for example, I am in my Mike at Mailstand email, and right now I have one spam email. If I click in, right, it's generally speaking, it's a pretty bad email, right? It's, you know, hello, no name, hope you're fine, right? It's pretty blanket. They don't mention my company name. They don't talk about me. They're even sending it to like our team email. So there's a lot of red flags there, but for all intents and purposes, it could actually still get through. But a lot of the time people ask, hey, why is my email going to spam? And if you go and look at the original, so there's an SPF record, and that passes, right? So the user has an SPF record. The user has a DKIM record. So Google actually will summarize that. But if you search, there's no DMARC. And basically, you need these three in order for it to be kind of like a quote-unquote like good handshake email between their mail server and our mail server. And so, or the mail server that you just set up with Google. And so it's basically, you can tell without running any tools, if you go into the code behind the scenes, it's missing a DMARC record. So now on the flip side, I have another email where, you know, it's from a pretty legitimate company, and they sent me 2 follow-up emails, right? And again, they're pretty good, right? They have a name, and you know they're a little bit personalized, not too bad, mostly text-based. But when you show the original, you'll see they got SPF pass, DKIM, and DMARC pass. So this basically means that the company that was sending it here, they have everything all set up, right? So basically the way that we look at it is you want to start off on the right foot from there, saying, you know, you just want to have these records set up. And so the way that you have these records set up is by setting them up in your DNS settings. Again, I'm going to keep saying it in the video. When you add these, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to set up. So here for Google, there are kind of tools out there that kind of help set up each record. And so generally speaking, they're all about the same. They have, like, for example, to an average person, you know, we have to copy and paste this code, and I'll provide, basically Google has SPF instructions, DMARC, and DKIM instructions. I will provide those in the description of this video. But generally speaking, each one of these has a very specific meaning, but as long as you have something in there that resembles this, and obviously set up with the proper format, which I'll show in this video, then you're all set. So it's as simple as setting up an SPF record. You're going to go to your DNS settings, and you are going to add a TXT record and do host. And so, boom, right there, you are good to go. Your SPF record is set up, but again, it does take some time. All right, and so now the SPF record is done. All right, so DMARC, basically what you're going to do is take this, and then you are going to, I believe, do the same thing, right? So a TXT record, and then every time we're doing @ which means that it's just like the root domain, meaning rar.com. But in this case, you'll see it'll tell you to create a subdomain. And so to do that, you're just going to add DMARC there. And so basically what this does is it says DMARC, and then it'll really be DMARC.rar. And that's basically what these email providers are looking for, is something along those lines of, in this case, we're just keeping it consistent so that email providers know. And then so you'll copy and paste this value, and you'll notice it says like DMARC reports to an email address. So this has nothing to do with whatever email addresses that you set up over here, or whatever the alias that you might set up is. Again, aliases are not good. This basically means that if DMARCs generate reports, and this will send reports daily or hourly, depending on how it's set up, to this report. And so what I end up doing, I don't want to see the report, so I just erase it. And so in that case, the DMARC is now set up. Okay, and so that is done. So now finally, setting up the DKIM is a little bit more time consuming because Google generates the, those last two that I added are just kind of general blanket like rules / codes that are universal. Specifically for DMARC, specifically for DKIM, correction there, DKIM, there is basically an authentication that is generated, and so that's what you need to put in. So in this case, we are going to go within the admin settings of the mail account, and again, you only have to set this up, all of this up once across the domain. And so you'll just go to apps, Google Workspace, and then I'll send a link for this. And then you're going to say, hey, authenticate email. And again, this is on the admin side, so we're doing it for the entire domain that we just set up. Okay, so we're going to hit generate new record. And then these are standard kind of selectors, so you don't need to change anything here. And so one thing to note is you're going to want to wait 24 to 72 hours before kind of hitting generate. I guess it's like a thing on the back end that Google needs to do. So we waited a couple days, we hit generate, and so now you have the host name and the TXT record. So basically what we're going to do is go in here, we're going to add another record. It's going to be a TXT record, and then in this case we're going to add google.domain key. And then we are going to hit this, or copy that, and then hit enter. And so that TXT record's added, and so now what we're going to do, this takes a while to propagate again, right? It might take that 24 to 48 hours, but then we're going to hit start authentication. And so they'll say, hey, it takes 48 hours or so. Sometimes it updates within here pretty quickly, but later in the video we're going to actually send some test emails, and we're going to basically confirm that everything is set up properly. So no need to kind of check back here. And if you notice, like we threw in these TXT records, and you don't really know if you actually did it right. It saves here, but we're going to use a tool called Mail Tester to confirm once we send it. So basically what happens is now that these TXT records are in place, when you hit send, this kind of initiates so that it'll actually be tagged properly on the email. So later in the video we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so now that we have everything set up, we have our DMARC, our DKIM, and our SPF record set up. Now we want to configure each one of our mailboxes in our user list. Mainly we are setting up two specific things. Three. So one is our signature. Two is our kind of profile within Google. And 3 is what we call Gravatar, which is a globally recognized avatar. Something that not a lot of people talk about, but mainly there is something that goes on within an inbox. So kind of when an email comes in, there's kind of like an online profile, right? So in this case, actually Google doesn't even have it. This is like a blanket image, but by setting up, a profile, you're actually able to have like an image show up, and that actually helps with open and click rates, but it also helps with just like getting your email specifically within the inbox. So first what we'll do is we will go into in this case we're just doing the admin email, but you're also going to want to do this for the other 2 as well that you set up. So going to click in, going to set up a picture, and it is, I just have it as Sarah profile. Just gotta find it. Here we go. Okay, so we set the picture. They're just going to have us confirm the password. And so that will be set. I guess it didn't save. Profile. Here we go. So that'll save, that'll show up. And then if there's any other like user information that you want to add on the person, that's also helpful. Like adding a job title, you can say something like account manager. It's basically providing Google with as much information as possible to make it look, as legitimate as possible to them. You really want to take the time, instead of really what Google's looking for are like emails that have been programmatically created, meaning people spinning up hundreds and hundreds of mailboxes. So by adding employee information, adding a picture into the Google user settings, that's really helpful. So next we're going to create a signature. And so signatures are really important. You want to have a text-based signature in place, and so in this case I created it here. So we're gonna go into the signatures, and we're going to scroll down and click create new signature. You'll add a label. And so there's a few things to note. So 1 is it's text-based. There are 0 images. 2, we're pitching Mailstand in this case, but if you notice, we're having this URL be the secondary URL that we created. So yeah, when you go to the URL, after we set up that redirection, it's going back to Mailstand, for example. But and that was through the DNS settings that we set up through the redirect. But what happens is when you send an outbound email, what's happening is Google's looking and seeing, okay, you're sending out an email from this domain, but why is your URL something different? Right? So they're actually looking to see, hey, do these URLs like match? And a lot of the time when people put in their signature, they want to put in their email. So you want to put the email address of the outbound email account that you're using. So a lot of the time people will change up, the email and name and things like that. But really, you just want to make sure the URLs are the same. Also, any social links that you can point to your website is really helpful. So in this case, we have our LinkedIn profile, but if you have a Twitter or you want to add review information, things like that are really helpful. Trying to add some sort of like location. If you have a physical office, that's even better. In our case, Mailstand's a remote company located in Philly, so we're adding that. So trying to basically add as much legitimacy to your email as possible, so that literally when our account manager Sarah sends this email, they, even though it's a secondary email account, when they click it, it's going to Mailstand, right? So they know kind of what's up. So we'll set that for on new emails and replies. So that will be good. You also, when we sync it to Mailstand later, you're also going to want to have that there, but we automatically will pull it in when you upload it. So you'll see that in a little bit. And so great. So we set that up, and then finally we want to set up Gravatar, which is basically a globally recognized URL. So you're going to take the email address of this, and then you'll use the same password. After you get to that screen, just check your email address and you'll have an activate account here. And then you can use the same email address that we used here. And then log in. And then you'll want to go to settings and just click upload photo. And again, we're just going to use Sarah profile. Okay, and then you just want to update that so that there's profile details. And what's crazy is that this WordPress like profile is used across like millions of websites. So a lot of the time when you send an email from a mailbox, it's actually this is gonna show up, and it's just gonna add legitimacy to things. So that's basically how to configure your email account. And so again, you're gonna want to do this for all the users on there. And so if you notice now, this shows up. And so depending on, in this case, we created 3 for our account manager, but if you have different names and you want different pictures and things like that. So yeah, that's basically how you configure each mailbox. And so that's the general infrastructure. And now we're going to get into how to warm up your mailbox next. So warming up your inbox is crucial to email deliverability for Google Workspace inboxes. So basically, we use a tool called Warm Up Inbox. What they do is they have a huge network of already existing email inboxes, and they talk to each other. So it gives you the ability to really just know kind of where emails are landing, whether it's in the inbox or spam. And then if it lands in the spam box, they'll automatically take it out and tell Google, hey, this isn't spam, right? So it basically always is improving your mailbox. So while it's running, you always want to keep it synced. And so we signed up for a trial, and then the way to do this to add the inbox is you open up App Access Control, and then you click Add App and Client ID. There's a code here, basically maps the specific ID. You're going to search, you're going to select Warm Up Inbox, you're going to select this, and you're going to say, hey, this can be trusted. And so now that that is set, we are done and ready to sync. And then we are going to hit allow. And so now you are setting up your sender first name. And so now you have the ability to kind of control reply percentage and things like that. But for the time being, you just want to start off small and gradually increase, and they'll automatically do this for you. So you can go ahead and hit Add Inbox. And so from there, what we are going to do is this is going to be automatically running, and in the next window I will show you how this works. But generally speaking, this is how the graph will work. So each day it'll send 4, 12, 16, right? So it'll gradually go up, and it'll tell you kind of what's going on within your inbox. So yeah, I will show you kind of what those specific emails look like. And so now that this mailbox is running, you really want to keep this running for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then you're able to start sending emails within your MailStan account. So while the mailboxes are warming, it's just good to test your email to make sure that everything we set up on the DNS settings, like the SPF, the DKIM, and the DMARC, are set up properly. So the best and easiest tool that we use, it's free, it's called Mail Tester. And literally all you have to do is copy and paste this email address, and then write in a message, and then you can do a test email. And actually what I like to do is just do lorem ipsum, which is just like a random text generator. So all you do, I'm just gonna say, and again, sometimes you can even send a blank hello, but I just like to do this. And so then you hit send on the mailbox. Okay, and then so that will send out. And then you check your score. And basically what this is doing is it's analyzing kind of the behind the scenes of the email, right? So for example, it's looking for the SPF, the DKIM, as it's sending out, right? So that thing that I showed you before, that's what it's doing. And so it puts it in this nice, like, easy to use interface, and it gives you a score, out of 10, right? Generally speaking, anything above an 8 out of 10 is good. And it says, wow, you can send, right? So like these kind of prompts are helpful. And so what it's doing is Spam Assassin is actually like a really popular score that providers use to just see like, hey, is this email spam, based off like a lot of settings. So that passes. The one that's really important to check is see if you're properly authenticated. So the SPF works, the DKIM is valid, and the DMARC works. So the video that we showed in the past of the DNS, or in the beginning of the video, that is all properly set up. So the only thing that you really want to pay attention to are blacklists, right? So as you notice, we literally just created this email from scratch. It is possible to get on a blacklist immediately. So in this case, we're on Sorbs and Backscatter. Literally, we haven't sent any emails yet. So why is that? So in other videos, we're going to show you how to get removed from these. But in short, all you do is go to each individual blacklist provider and request to be removed. So they associate it with an IP address. So for example, the way it works is rar.com is associated with other email accounts. So for example, if I create another one called Acme, or somebody, right now I'm in Philadelphia, but somebody in California might create, any kind of email address like mycompany.com, right? That's on, basically we're on shared IP addresses, meaning Sarah at rar.com is also sharing the same IP address as, Mike at acme.com from a completely different company from across the country, right? And yet, like, basically activities that they have done gets this on Sorbs. So for example, you can do Sorbs lookup and see. You enter the IP address that you want to look at, you punch it in, and you check your entry. And so you can see, there's 2 virus entries that are now green listed, which means it's okay. But look, you can see 2,800, about 2,800 entries have been flagged on this, right? And so some are as recent as yesterday, but we haven't sent any emails. So basically what we have to do is go through the delisting process for this, and then same thing with Backscatter. So that's part of the issue with like service providers like Google Workspace. You're sharing the same IP address with other emailers, and due to that, other activities from other people could affect you. So there's a tool called DynoSend that basically monitors blacklists for you and automatically removes them for you. That's in another video we'll show you. But in this case, it's really common for Google and Workspace or Outlook accounts to be on shared blacklists. So even though you haven't sent a single email, it is possible to be on a blacklist. So depending on the blacklist, sometimes it doesn't matter. So for example, like we have seen this be yellow listed on Host Karma, and that really doesn't affect deliverability from what we've seen. But for example, being on Sorbs and Spam House, those are really important ones to be removed from, that we see basically you're immediately going to spam, even with sending emails, or even with warm up and everything. So before sending, you really want to make sure that when you do this test, that you're on 0 blacklists here as well. So now that everything's authenticated, and assuming that you're off these blacklists, and in some cases it could take a couple of days up to a week. I know in this case, like Sorbs, it's almost instant within like 24 hours. Sometimes it's even instant. So, and you just want to pay attention to the IP address that's listed. For example, if you go to blacklistchecker.com, which is a way to check. So, for example, I type in rar.com, okay? It's going to check rar.com across blacklists. But if that's basically a different IP address, and actually MX Toolbox is another good one. So you can go to blacklist and type in rar.com. You can check the blacklist and say, hey, we noticed you're on blacklists. And if you notice, this IP is different than the IP address that we actually sent the email from, which is this. So email addresses have two different IPs. The sending IP, which is coming from the Google servers, which is going the outbound way, and then the domain IP, which is like hosted on Namecheap. So in this case, the Namecheap IP address is on UCE Protect, and this one that honestly I haven't seen before. So overall, it's actually on 4 different blacklists that you have to get off. And again, we haven't sent a single email. So these are things that you need to pay attention to before sending, and almost question to yourself, if I'm like, you shouldn't even send emails if you are on blacklist. So you do have to manually go through and remove these. And really, it's just a simple Google search of, hey, how do I get off this? And so once you're off those, you are good to send and sync your mailbox to Gmail. But outside of that, literally there is nothing to do. One thing to note is it is important to always be running on a warm-up provider, because as deliverability increases, as it actually decreases, you want warm-up inbox, for example, to constantly increase your deliverability. So and basically help with it through the algorithm that they have. So as long as you're warming up on warm-up inbox and you're off blacklist and everything looks good on Mail Tester, then you are good to go.